Now, as we know, Collision is a tech conference, so people might be wondering where a discussion on empathy fits into all this. So to frame this conversation, I think it's important that we start with a baseline definition of empathy. So Mary, I'd like to start with you. Give us your perspective.
Well, I think number one, empathy is the ultimate human trait, and there are two major aspects to empathy. Cognitive empathy, perspective taking, is probably the most commonly accepted definition of empathy, but it's the soulless part of it. It's the part that allows you to be a super psychopath. So the other part of empathy that makes us human is the affective side of empathy, which is emotion. And emotional literacy is key to being fully empathic. So that, I think, would be my stopgap overview of what empathy means.
So then, given that definition, Tracey, I want to bring you in here. What are you seeing in terms of empathy and also a lack of empathy in your industry?
So, I mean, I'll take it from the positive side. There's been, in the software development space, a movement towards what's termed human-centered design, which is really talking to the end users of ideas or just the software that you're creating before it gets created, so that there's a better understanding of how that software can work, that brings into the idea of what the end user is looking at before it gets to the software developers. I also am seeing a trend for software developers to be looking at what they are designing and how it's impactful. It's not just technology for technology's sake. So I think that that's something that we should all be aware of. I also think that the movement towards diversity within the software industry will impact how products are designed.
So give us a little more insight into that, because a lot of times some of these things are sort of designed in a bubble, and the end users, when they get there, they're like, this doesn't actually solve the problem. How does having more of that diversity as well as empathy really help not just the products and the services, but bottom lines as well?
Well, I think it's really important. There was a study that was done by Scientific America, I think within 5 years ago, which showcased how products that had more diversity on the teams that were creating them had better results, better outcomes. So empathy and a broader sense of who's putting together end solutions has shown that it works at the bottom line. So it is not just about being socially aware. It's also about how, when you really think about who's going to be using the product, that it does create better products that people want to use. Because we've all looked at products, all of us, and have said, what were they thinking when this was developed? I also think that it's important for the software industry, the technology industry, to think about, it's not just about using cool technology. It's what problem are you solving? So let's not fit the technology into, making it all about that and making it cool versus really thinking about the solution that you're trying and the problem you're trying to solve.
So then, Mary, given the importance of this from concept to the final products and services, we're really still not seeing a lot of empathy sort of built into a lot of these processes, these systems. How do you teach empathy? Is that something that can actually be taught?
Well, I always say that empathy cannot be taught in the traditional ways, as you would say in an instructional setting like a school or university, but it can be caught. And I believe that we are all predisposed to empathy, and that has now been scientifically proven, but that empathy either flourishes or fades in the first year of life, in the loving relationship between the parent or parents and that baby. And if that baby does not experience being felt and being responded to, that baby is at risk of not developing empathy, that baby is learning to love or learning to hate. And if you trace back sociopaths, they had a terrible first year and early childhood experience. That said, we bring that loving relationship of a parent and a baby and that attachment into a classroom for over a school year children observe and interact with a parent and a baby, to take the perspective of that baby, the cognitive aspect of empathy. How is that baby feeling? What's the name of that feeling? And how does the parent understand how that baby is feeling and respond? So that basically children are learning the alphabet of their emotions, which is key because that's the affective side of empathy. If you don't have the words to think about, you can't think about anything. So the brilliant thing about teaching or learning empathy, and I mean, just because we teach doesn't mean anyone is learning. Just because you throw a ball doesn't mean anyone is catching. And I think we oversubscribe to instruction as the way to learn. And I mean, most kids and adults actually who are involved with technology are self-learning. So I think there is an amazing opportunity to develop empathy at any stage of life, given these opportunities to have an emotional connection, as you do in our classrooms on 3 continents. Doesn't matter what language, it's the human spirit. It's the element of our humanity that is the child is learning. And children do learn to take perspective and do develop emotional literacy and do become empathic. And when that happens, not only are you affecting good business practice, you're affecting good humanity for the generations. And we do know that this capacity to be empathic has a very deep biological base. So yes, empathy can absolutely be learned.
Now, I do want to look at something. I know that, Mary, you've talked about what you've called empathy disparity. And we know that some analysts blame technology for us being less empathetic now, or perhaps more so our use of technology. I'd like to ask you both how the tech world can be part of the solution. Mary, I'll start with you.
Well, I think the tech world is here to stay. It's just we have to appreciate its power, its ability to be a support to our humanity, but also to look at balance. And particularly when you look at how we spend the time in our day, it's particularly in childhood. If children don't have opportunities to be in real face-to-face relationships, they don't learn the nuances of how to be a friend, how to be a colleague, how to collaborate, so that later on, technology will encompass empathy. So I think really we need to be mindful of balances. It's not just work-life balance, it's technology relationship balance. So I don't see technology as the enemy at all. I see it as being a support to our greater humanity. We are in a crisis of connection at the moment. And I think technology can help that as long as we realize we still do need time with one another, because you don't develop emotionally unless you are in the give and take of a relationship.
And Tracey?
I would agree with Mary. I think the studies that we're seeing, the short studies that have happened at this point, people crave a human connection. Right now, technology is enabling this human connection. It allows us face-to-face. It does not allow the physical closeness that we're able to do. And, avatars aren't going to replace me being actually with you in the room. There is a difference. But technology has enabled us at this point during this crisis to continue to conduct work, to continue to conduct business, whether it's creating software or ordering food. There is a place for technology. And I believe that post-COVID, we're going to honestly understand the balance between technology and human interaction, physical human interaction.
Oh, very well said. And thank you so much, both of you ladies there, for joining me today. Mary Gordon, the founder of Root of Empathy, and Tracey Welson-Rossman, the founder of Tech Girls and CMO of Chariot Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.